Hi everyone, welcome back to another video on my channel. In this video, I want to discuss in depth about my experience with getting LASIK or vision correction surgery. This would be very helpful to you if you're thinking of getting LASIK or you're getting LASIK very soon, because I'll be talking about things I wish I knew before I went into it. You can find all the links where I got my information in the description box below. I'll heavily reference Clear Vision's website because that's the clinic I had my procedure at, and I also think their articles are very good. As always, all timestamps are in the description box below. First things first, we need to be clear about the definitions and the actual procedure that I had. I had vision correction surgery, which I have referred to as LASIK many times in my videos, and my friends and I call it LASIK, and probably you yourself have referred to it as LASIK as well. The word LASIK has become synonymous for vision correction surgery. It's almost like a generic trademark, like when the brand name has become the generic term for a general group of products or services. Kinda like how we refer to any plastic container as Tupperware, but Tupperware is actually a legit brand name, not the item itself. So in actuality, LASIK refers to a very specific procedure that was introduced in 1994. In fact, I don't even think most people in the world who do vision correction surgery get LASIK nowadays because so many new technologies and procedures have come up since 1994. And the procedure I went for is called TransPRK, and it was introduced in 2013. Both LASIK and TransPRK can also be referred to as refractive eye surgery. The main difference between LASIK and TransPRK is that TransPRK is completely bladeless and no cuts are made on your cornea or your eye. The old school LASIK surgery did have to cut a flap on your cornea, so I believe that is the origin of its reputation being quite risky or scary. The technological advancements in refractive eye surgery is very interesting, and it's so cool to see how the procedures get more and more sophisticated and comfortable for the patients. I'll try not to call it LASIK from now on in this video because it's technically incorrect, so I'll just call it vision correction surgery. But LASIK is easier to say, so if I do say LASIK, just remember that my exact procedure is TransPRK and I'm just referring to vision correction surgery in general. Okay, a quick background on my eye history and my vision prior to surgery. I've been wearing glasses since I was in primary 2. My degree was not terrible. In fact, the doctor told me that it's actually not that bad. I was about 200 in my right eye and 275 in my left eye. So it wasn't like 400, 500, but it was still imperfect enough that I wouldn't feel confident going out into the world without glasses because I wouldn't be able to see bus numbers, I would be worried about crossing the road, and I wouldn't be able to read signs or see the whiteboard in class. I didn't wear contact lenses because they were expensive, so I've only worn contacts a few times in my life for special occasions, and they were always very uncomfortable because I wasn't used to it. So when and why did I decide to do vision correction surgery? Honestly, it was because I suddenly had many friends, well, 3 friends, who told me that they had gotten LASIK. My best friend did it first, and I was able to see from start to finish what the procedure and the recovery process was like. So I thought I kind of knew what to expect if I were to go through it too. And then after talking to my other friends, they also told me that they don't regret it, and it was one of the best decisions they've made. Oh yeah, and all my friends did it at the same clinic, which is Clear Vision, so that's where I chose to do my surgery. I know some public hospitals who do refractive eye surgery also, and it's typically cheaper, so depending on your budget, that's an option for you too. Because my best friend went through it first, I knew most of the costs involved, and I created a rough budget and financial plan based off her experience. If you see this on screen, this is what I had budgeted for the entire process, including my eye drops and taxi rides, anything that would be related to the surgery itself. The surgery was $3,900, excluding all the medications. However, depending on your eye condition, you might have to do another procedure. I'm not sure if this is specific to my clinic and if other clinics offer this, but one of my friends had to do an additional procedure called corneal cross-linking, or CXL, on her left eye because during the test they found that her left cornea was a bit too thin. It was an additional $600 per eye for this treatment. I didn't have to do this treatment and neither did my other 2 friends, but keep in mind that this might be an additional cost. The clinic will let you know during your consultation if you have to do this extra procedure, so you can keep that into account in your budget. So my final costs are as shown. Thankfully, I mostly kept to my budget. I would say 4.5k would be a good budget if you're thinking of saving up for TransPRK, at least around this time. Like who knows if it will be more expensive or even cheaper in the future. Alright, so I figured out a rough budget and now I'm calling up Clear Vision to book a consultation appointment to assess if I am suitable for vision correction surgery. What can you expect during a consultation? Well, during the consultation, they'll do a bunch of eye tests to make sure that you're a good candidate for the surgery. If you need the additional CXL treatment that I mentioned before, they'll also let you know at this appointment. My consultation took a couple hours and it was in the late afternoon, and I highly recommend you take a late afternoon slot also, because one of their tests involves this eye drop that will dilate your pupil so that the doctor can check the back of your eye. But what it does is that you won't be able to read at close range. So your near vision will be super blurry and it'll be quite hard to see anything on your phone also. So you probably cannot do any computer work after the consultation, so it's best to just go home and rest or do something else that doesn't involve any reading. The blurry vision should be okay by the next morning. And also, it's like a small taste of what is going to happen to your vision when you're recovering from the actual surgery later on. I won't talk too much about the surgery because I feel like what happens during the surgery pales in comparison to the recovery process that you'll go through after the surgery. The surgery itself is only about 15 minutes, and the rest of the time before that you're just waiting around. The clinic will brief you very thoroughly on the actual surgery process both during the consultation and the day of the surgery. If you want to find out more about the actual surgery process, I'll leave some links in the description below. But very briefly about the operation itself. My biggest fear was that the numbing eye drops would wear off before the surgery and that I would be able to feel the laser burning my eye, but no worries, that didn't happen. I also didn't feel any pain, maybe just a bit of discomfort because the doctor has to clamp your eye open with this metal tool. I was also afraid that I would be able to see the laser cutting my eye, but I didn't. It was just a green light and mostly remained a green light throughout the procedure. So immediately after I left the operating room, I was in the waiting room waiting for my friend to come and pick me up. I was wearing the sunglasses they gave me. Mostly I was still functional. I could talk to the nurses and use my phone. My vision was still a bit blurry, but I wasn't weak or anything. Like maybe it was adrenaline and the numbing eye drops also haven't worn off. Then in the car, I think that's when the numbing eye drops started to wear off slowly and my eyes became really light sensitive and started to sting. My right eye was constantly watering the whole ride home and it's the onion stinging feeling. So I definitely don't recommend taking public transport. Just take a cab and have someone with you if it's possible. Immediately after reaching home, I took the painkiller they gave me and went to sleep. The clinic gives you 5 to 8 days of MC, which makes you assume that that's the recovery time that you need. But realistically for me, I think it was a 2-month recovery process. I had a running list of notes on my phone that I kept updating every day based on the symptoms I was experiencing. I transferred it to a Google Doc and I've linked it below in the description box. I decided not to put it in the video because it's going to make this video even longer and I feel like it'll be easier to refer to if it's in a document, if you're really interested in following along on the recovery process and compare notes. My notes are also pretty detailed and pedantic because it's day-by-day notes, but I know that I really wish I had this information with this level of detail, especially when I was recovering and I felt very scared and alone and worried that something was wrong. A lot of my friends forgot the details of their recovery and couldn't warn me in advance. So, if you're seriously going to do this, I want you to go in with your eyes wide open. So I'll link my notes in the description below. I thought that after having seen my best friend go through it and talking to my other friends about it, I thought that I was very prepared for the entire experience. But there were still a few things that took me by surprise, and it was mostly the not so pleasant things. Naturally, I feel like people have very selective memory when it comes to negative experiences, and because the end result is so good, they forget the difficult parts in the middle. And so I'm recording this down so that you're aware of what might happen to you and mentally prepare yourself for what is to come. Okay, so the first thing on this list is actually a good thing, and that is I can see almost immediately post-surgery. The main example is I could see my phone screen immediately after I left the OR, and so I could send a text to my friend to come pick me up. And the whole time I was recovering, I could use my phone and text without issue. Maybe it's also because I set my phone's display text super big. In any case, I was quite surprised by this because I thought my vision would be completely blurry for a few days. And it was blurry. My photos were all shaky and blurry and I didn't know until much later. But at least I could still read and send messages. Next, I think was the biggest shock immediately after the surgery, and that was the surgical tape that they used to tape your face mask onto your face. So before the surgery, the nurses would tape a disposable face mask just above your nose and on your cheeks below your eyes so that it won't come off during the surgery. And then after the surgery, they will take the mask off. And also, the clinic instructs you not to put on any skincare or products on your face and body before the surgery. So the tape was on my bare skin and I didn't realize how sticky it was. And I'm sure it's a medical necessity so that the mask won't fly off your face. So they shouldn't make it any less sticky, but couldn't it be at least more gentle and not like super glue on your skin? So I remember the doctor peeled it off and it hurt more than the actual surgery. He didn't rip it off my face, he peeled it off very gently, but it was just really sticky and I think it took off a very thin layer of my skin. And in the car, when my eyes were watering like crazy and stinging a lot, my cheeks stung way more. It was really, really painful. So the moment I came home and before I slept, I put on a thick layer of soothing cream. It's this one by La Roche-Posay. And then at night, I changed to a hydrocolloid plaster and I pasted 2 huge rectangles of it on my cheeks next to my nose because my skin was really raw and the cream was just not enough. And so I just had those hydrocolloid plasters on my face for the next 3 days so that the skin could heal. This might be a unique experience because I have very sensitive skin, obviously, and thankfully I knew how to deal with it. But just in case this happens to you too, just make sure to get these hydrocolloid plasters from NextCare. I like these ones because it's really thick and you can cut it to size. They healed my raw skin really well, and in about 3 days, my skin was fully healed and not sensitive anymore. But it was definitely a surprise and not a side effect that I had expected at all from this experience. This is the most important and something that I wish I had been warned about more explicitly in advance, and that is that your full recovery period is going to be much longer than the 1 to 2 initial weeks of recovery. And while this is happening, you're going to be anxious and worried a lot. I mean, the clinic does prepare you for this. They say that your vision may only stabilize anytime between 1 to 6 months, depending on your vision prior to surgery. So theoretically, I knew this, but the actual experience of going through it was a roller coaster. So what does it mean when your vision isn't stabilized? It means that your vision is blurry as heck. And so for the first 1.5 months post-surgery, my vision was nowhere near perfect. I explained it very, very thoroughly in my recovery notes that I have linked in the description, so you can have a look at it after this video. And on top of the anxiety, there was also a lot of frustration because I still had to do work while this was all happening. So I would be struggling with my blurry vision at work and feeling like work is ruining my vision, but I cannot not work, right? And after work, I felt like I couldn't do anything fun, like watching Netflix or YouTube, because I had looked at the screen so much during the day, which meant that all I could do in a day was work. And so I just felt really down during this period and also worried that maybe I wasn't recovering fast enough. But yeah, if you're already more prone to anxiety and worry than others, this may be a very difficult time for you. I think managing your expectations of the speed of your recovery is very important here. Most times it will get better, but while you're going through it, it seems like it's never going to get better or that something went wrong. And I think my friends probably went through the same thing, but they forgot about it after it all resolved itself, and so they forgot to tell me. But I really wish I had known and that I had been prepared for it. Of course, everybody's experience with the recovery process will be different, but I'm sharing mine so that you can have an idea of what might happen. And come back to this video if you think you're going through the same thing or you want to compare notes on your own recovery. Next, something that I didn't know would happen is that my eyes would be more sensitive to my physical state and my environment. I noticed that the more tired I am, so maybe the later I sleep or the earlier I wake up, the drier my eyes are the next day. I also noticed that aircon rooms and drier environments would make my eyes feel much drier than usual. So I'm not sure how much of it is a side effect of TransPRK and how much of it is also just me being more aware of the things affecting my eyes because I'm more particular about them now. But I honestly don't mind it. I feel like I'm more attuned to my physical state, and if my eyes are tired, I really feel it. The last thing I wish I had known, and this is quite a small matter in the grand scheme of things, but for my clinic, I didn't know that they would start charging for consultations after the first 3 months. So I continued to see my doctor 2 months after the first 3 months, and it was $53.50, including GST, for each consultation. I mean, it was only $100 more, and I would rather have the assurance of the doctor than be cheap about the $100, but I guess it was just annoying because I didn't expect it, so I didn't budget for it. But it all worked out in the end, so it was fine. Those are the main things I wish I had known before getting TransPRK. If you've had vision correction surgery before, please share your experience in the comments below, and if there's anything unexpected that you wish you had known, please share that as well. It would really help other people who are thinking of getting this procedure. After your surgery, you'll have 5 days of MC or about 1 week to recover. I feel like most people would need more days, and you can ask for an extension of your MC from the clinic. But for sure, you need at least 1 full week or 7 days to just sit at home and recover. I did go back to work after 1.5 weeks, but I would have liked at least 2 weeks for the initial recovery period because it's a crucial time when your eyes are healing. Anyway, here are some tips for those initial couple weeks while you're resting and recovering from the surgery. Firstly, the night before or the morning of your surgery, you should prepare your environment for when you come back home from surgery. Make sure that you draw the curtains in your room and try to make it as dark as possible because after the surgery, your eyes will be very sensitive to light. Be aware of which rooms you'll be using most frequently in the house and check to see if they get a lot of bright natural light and figure out ways to minimize that. For example, I only realized how bright my kitchen was after my surgery, so I mostly avoided going into the kitchen, or I would wear my sunglasses in there and avoid the windows. Secondly, adjust the text size on your phone and make it huge, like the largest possible size you can make it. It'll be a bit comical, but trust me, you'll appreciate it. I also did the same for my work laptop. Even after the first week of MC, when you have to go back to work, your vision is still blurry. So I changed the settings on my work laptop to be 200% or 250%, something like that, and it helped a lot. My phone and computer were on this large setting for almost a month or more, and I got very used to it. Eventually, I did slowly wean myself off of it, and I would make the text one size smaller each day until I was back to the normal pre-LASIK size. Thirdly, set alarms for your eye drop routine. I had 4 eye drops that I had to rotate through during my recovery, and I had to put them in every hour. I would highly recommend setting an alarm or a timer so that you won't forget. My clinic also gave a sheet of paper with a timetable, which was useful to keep track of which eye drops I did last. This first set of eye drops was quite easy because it's just every hour, but later on you'll have even more complicated routines. Like some you have to take every 2 hours, and some you have to take every hour, and you rotate between 2 eye drops. So for this case, I'll set a separate alarm for each eye drop. It's up to you how you want to set it, but having alarms really helps so that you won't forget your eye drops. Again, just to reiterate, this initial recovery period is super important and will mostly determine how well your eyes heal, so be diligent with your eye drops. Next, use the eyelid wipes provided to clean your face. You'll be advised not to get water near your eyes while you're recovering, which means you can't wash your face like you normally do. And if you're anything like me and you're very prone to breakouts and pimples, then you'll understand why I was so concerned about this. But thankfully, they give you these wipes that are meant for you to clean your eyelids to prevent any bacterial infection, and the wipes are huge, so you can use the same wipes to clean your entire face, and it works great. It's very gentle and really cleans your skin pretty well. I could also moisturize my face and do my skincare routine while avoiding the eye area, of course. Next, unless you're allergic or you're very sensitive to medication, don't hesitate to take the painkillers and the sleeping pills that the clinic provides. My best friend didn't take any of the pills because she's that kind of person, but I didn't hesitate because I'm very sensitive to pain and I don't fall asleep very easily. So to make your recovery journey much easier, just take the painkillers and the sleeping pills when you need to. Keep in mind that the painkillers are very strong, so maybe don't take them before your morning appointment. I took a painkiller the morning of my first checkup appointment post-surgery and I nearly fainted in the toilet because it was so strong, so I don't recommend that you do that. Other times when you're at home, it's fine. Next, prepare any vision-free activities like podcasts or audiobooks to keep you occupied during this time. It's going to be quite boring because there's not much you can do, and you should be resting as much as you can. Sometimes I took 2 naps a day because even though I wasn't doing much, I still felt very tired. But when I wasn't sleeping, I was listening to YouTube videos and that kept me occupied. Finally, it goes without saying, and it's very obvious, but I thought I'll include it to remind you anyway, and that is that rest is of the utmost importance. When you are recovering in that first week, really just rest and sleep as much as you can. For the second week, some of you might have to go back to work, but remember to take it easy and take frequent eye breaks. So every 30 minutes, just look away from your computer screen for 20 to 30 seconds. I would set a timer on my phone for this so that it can remind me. Even after the initial 2-week recovery period, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. These are more like long-term habits for the overall health of your eyes. Firstly, you have to avoid rubbing your eyes. TransPRK doesn't cut a flap in your cornea, so it's not to prevent the flap from coming off again or anything, but it's more to prevent any damage to the cornea. You're ideally not supposed to rub your eyes at all, even if you did get surgery, because it's pretty damaging to the eye. I used to rub my eyes a lot, but after surgery I've completely stopped. If my eye is itchy, I try to rub around my eye or something, but I try not to press on the eyeball. Secondly, try to wear sunglasses when you're outside and it's very bright and sunny, the kind of bright and sunny where you have to squint your eyes to see properly. UV rays from the sun is very damaging to the eye and over time can cause things like corneal damage, cataracts, and macular degeneration. This applies to everybody, even if you have never had any procedure done. But now that I've had LASIK, I've become more aware of everything that could possibly degenerate my eye's health because I want to preserve my eyes for as long as possible. So if I'm outdoors and it's very bright, I'll always wear sunglasses. Thirdly, don't hesitate to use lubricating eye drops if you need them. Just take note that you should get preservative-free eye drops if you're going to be using them frequently, and because it's preservative-free, you shouldn't keep an open bottle for more than a month. As my eye doctor said, your eyeballs like being wet, so it's much healthier for your eyes to be wet than it is to be dry. Most people kinda know that dry eyes is a common side effect of vision correction surgery, but I think for most people, the dry eyes is really very mild. I would say that my eyes now are maybe 5% drier than pre-surgery, but I feel like my dry eyes were way worse when I wore contacts, so now it's really nothing that bothers me too much. So these 3 things are generally good practices even if you didn't get vision correction surgery. Obviously, I didn't do any of these things before LASIK because I wasn't aware and I wasn't very particular about preserving my eye health, so only after LASIK I really started to pay attention to these habits and practices. Just to remind you, if you want to read the full day-by-day notes of my recovery process, the link to the Google Doc is in the description box. In summary, I think it was money very well spent and I would recommend it to anyone if you are already considering it. I don't have to wipe my glasses lens 5 times a day. I don't have to deal with foggy glasses anymore when I wear my mask. I went to USS recently and I didn't have to worry about taking off my glasses before the roller coasters and I had perfect vision the whole time. I also went swimming at the beach and for the first time in my life, I could see everything on the beach perfectly. So I can do water sports or extreme sports comfortably without losing my glasses or worrying about my contacts, and I don't even have to think about my glasses and contacts when I'm traveling. My biggest reservation before getting vision correction surgery was the cost, but once I did it, and of course once I was fully recovered, I wouldn't want it any other way. So if you're thinking of getting vision correction surgery soon, or you're currently going through the recovery process, I wish you all the best and stay strong. It'll be worth it in the end. If you have any questions related to vision correction surgery or TransPRK, ask me in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer your question. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in my next video.